Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Storied Arcs podcast. I am your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are wrapping the book Plume by Lynn Smith by covering volumes 3 and 4, issues 10 to 17.
Yes, 10 to 17.
Breakdown.
Yeah, and I guess if you have, again, as you mentioned, the printed omnibus, there are a couple bonus issues there, bonus stories there.
As it turns out, 3, which, by the way, I'll just rip those off real quick.
Sure, yeah.
It's a Korik one-shot, which journeys, it tracks his journeys through the centuries. And the comp that I came up with, just to keep building on people's pop culture requisites for this podcast, the opening credits for X-Men Origins Wolverine, where it shows he and his brother going through the Civil War and then World War I and then World War II and then Vietnam, which was the best part of that movie, by the way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, because it's just like, here's one page of him
just
with
snippets
this master,
of,
but basically how they all end with them not listening to him and an ending in grief and heartbreak for him. Very cool issue. I wish it was longer, but that was, the only thing. Tegan one shot, you get an origin story, and here's an even more obscure comp for this. It reminds me of the A.C. Crispin Han Solo books. I don't know if you ever read that trilogy in the 90s.
No, I did not.
I did. I read them in the 90s, so I was a kid. Absolutely adored those books. It follows Han Solo and eventually Chewie from Han's teenage years. And the final scene, you're tracking with it that like he desperately needs to get off Tatooine because people are hunting him there. He has to avoid the Empire. He has to avoid the Hutts. He desperately needs money, and an old man and a kid and a droid walk into a bar.
Yeah.
End book that's the end of the third trilogy. And it's like, oh shoot, I should have known that was the scene that was coming, but it totally blindsided me, and it was just really well done. This one it tells Tegan's whole life story and ends with Vesper walking into the saloon saying it. So it's like a very cool comp there.
It's a that now legends canon Han Solo story, but
yes. And then the third one was a book called Plume, You Drive Me Crazy, which was just them as like spirit ghost protectors at the time of the first automobile being invented, and they take it for a test drive for fun and crash it into a tree.
Okay, all right. So that's
totally for fun.
All right, but that's post the end of the story. Then I guess not the end of the story. The end of Korik and Vesper's part of the story.
It's Korik and Vesper as ghosts.
Yeah. As it's okay.
And it might have been an old man hunter, but I don't think so. I think it was just one of Hunter's descendants.
Okay,
but not the kid at the end of the book. Now we spoiled the whole book anyway.
Well, we have.
So
we've gotten there. So all right.
I gotta say, for the genre of book that we're reading, I was a little shocked, or I think pleasantly surprised, but shocked.
I agree too. I think we talked last week about the magical, the all powerful magical character that's bound by some curse or spell or whatever, and the things we talked about, the idea of like the genie in Aladdin, and you mentioned Dobby from Harry Potter, the idea that these incredibly powerful beings are limited and bound by their existence, and part of the story, part of our protagonist journey is setting that being free. Forming a relationship with this character that you're not quote unquote supposed to have, right? Because these are supposed to be servants. They do your will, whether they're granting your wishes or simply being a slave, like a house elf. Part of the journey, part of the story is coming to setting that character free, getting them away from that burden. And it totally seems like Plume. Well, it totally seems like Plume was building towards that, because it literally builds to that. You know, we get to the point where we think this is what Vesper wants, because she wants to have Korik around, and there's a sense that Korik, he's a little torn, I guess. Like he does want this, but also he has this need to protect Vesper. He's moved beyond the idea of my job is to protect the person who possesses the amulet. Now it's hyper specific. I need to protect Vesper, which is why he says I have to go back. I have to go back. Otherwise, we can't defeat my brother. Yada yada yada. But it's building towards that end, and we get there, and that isn't the end of the story, because the end of the story is the two of them basically willingly together entering back into the role of the protector for someone else down the line.
Right.
So they are together in perpetuity, but they are in it, in the bonds, the shackles, the limitations, whatever it is of this curse, of this spell. And that isn't something you ever really see. It's not something you see often. Especially since but I do like how what Kaylin did here is that you got the ending, you got the outcome that you are conditioned to expect from a story like this. And then the story keeps going, and you find out, that isn't actually end. So it isn't like that desire.
But it doesn't feel like a tag on or a pivot either. Because
it's not.
I think she was like,
twist.
"Oh, here's the thing you think you wanted." Right.
Yes.
Which kind of reminds me of Kill or Be Killed. The fake vigilante ending.
The fake end. Yeah. But you build to the ending that the reader is anticipating, and then there's still time to legitimately build to the twist. So in so much that it's not really a twist. It isn't like a thing that comes out of nowhere. You're still building to that, because we see Korik all throughout when he's back to being human. Like, he's looking around for something like, no, I got to get back. Which is why he eyes the ring there. We focus on that, and he sees that. He's already thinking, like, in order to do this, I have to be all powerful again. So right. I have to. I appreciate being free of this, but in order to stop my brother, I have to do this again. I have to be the protector. So even though we got that ending, we're already building towards he's going to go back into the ring. And once we started building toward that, I don't know if this is how you read it. Once we started building towards I need to have power again, I thought it was going to be where he would remain human, but Vesper would go into the ring.
Oh yeah, no,
instead of them both. That's once we got past that initial not conclusion, but outcome of now Korik's human. And once he started talking about having to go back in and do the spell over again, I was anticipating the reversal there, where he would continue living as a human, but Vesper would be in the ring and she'd become the.
Mine was a little more cold-blooded. I was like,
someone's going to die.
Why don't they make Dom do it? And then he's bound, and then he's bound to serve them.
Well, because
rather than betray them,
because he'd find a way to screw it up and mess around. Because we see,
that freaking guy.
But we see early on there when we see what Dom is doing with Korik, he's cheating at cards.
Oh yeah, and like petty theft and
it's
gambling.
Not like and Korik is doing his best to curtail this, but when we jump in and see that, it does feel like this isn't the first time he's done this, because Korik's like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not going to keep doing this. So, right. and yet he still finds a way to disrupt what Dom was trying to do. So if you would put Dom in that role, he'd find a way to subvert.
Yeah. That being said, I think Korik would have been happy to help Vesper do that, like cheating cards, compared to what she was doing.
Well, probably that is true.
So that is true. But it's all about who they are. So we have Vesper State, to dovetail off of last episode. At the beginning of this book, this isn't about vengeance. It's a rescue mission.
Yeah.
She is declaring a genre shift.
Yeah. Which is exactly what we talked about at the end of last week, of that she was on kind of she was at a fork in the road here, on the precipice of deciding how she's going to move forward.
Right. So the reader still has a choice
with her quest. Yes.
Whether we believe her, like, is she telling herself this is a rescue mission when it's still really about vengeance?
Yeah.
Or have her motives shift? And I'm more optimistic about that. I think her motives have shift. I think it is about a rescue mission. I think she has seen the folly of vengeance and, realized that Dom's an idiot, not a good guy, don't like him. He does, and vengeance is his reason.
Yeah.
Getting out of bed in the morning, doing what he does. and basically, I don't want to be like Dom, but she never spelled that out for us, which I
No,
feel
no.
like is a little too handholdy if you have to spell out that kind of trope, whereas you can just say like, yeah, our character arrived at that conclusion because that's obviously where the story was taking them.
Yeah, no, I agree, because you have to trust that you've done the work in the previous volume to show why this would matter, you know, and you leave the reader to understand that you leave the reader to understand, to get inside Vesper's head and have us realize that Vesper has come to the conclusion of, well, I was on this trail of vengeance, and what did vengeance get me? Well, it got me nothing except I lost Korik, you know, like that.
Right.
So far, her journey of vengeance has gotten her to lose the effectively the one thing she cares about, you know. So we understand, because we've seen that relationship for that first volume, of where she is and why she would now say, yeah, it's now a rescue mission. Now it's about saving Korik from Dom, and that doesn't feel like an abrupt shift. It's not a hard turn. All those breadcrumbs are there. When you focus just on Vesper and Korik, it makes sense how she would come to that and have a level of understanding as to why vengeance is not a fruitful option, not a fruitful path.
Well, as Hunter himself says, revenge is for the selfish, justice is for the brave.
Yeah.
Which is right at the end of volume 3.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that is after, we should mention, Tegan dies.
Yes. Yeah.
When Tegan died and Korik, it looked like Korik died. It turns out he just lost his powers. I was like, oh, I was trying to figure out like what kind of Western this is. This might be like a Hateful Eight type Western where just everybody dies.
Everybody dies. Yeah.
Or basically any Tarantino movie. Everybody dies.
Yeah.
But no, Tegan dies. I think Tegan served her purpose. She became a better version of herself, especially if you read the backstory in the single issue one shot. And there was really nothing more she had to offer the team. Like, she had no powers against superpowers. They're already partnering with Dom, so they don't need to track Dom anymore. It's like, what more can she bring other than a few wisecracks?
Yeah. There is a level of someone needs to die to raise the stakes of the story kind of thing, which is not a great trope. Always also not great when it's a female character, but there is part of that there. I think also that there is a cost to all of this, and I think that's in a book that can be fairly lighthearted at times. It can be silly and a little absurd, intentionally so. I think there's a level of, hey, this has a cost to it,
Yeah.
and that a good person, quote unquote, like Tegan, gets killed while a bad person, quote unquote, like Dom, stays alive. At least for the time being here. That there is, and again, that it's a way to you lay character tracks that way, and it adds some resolve to what Vesper wants to do, because in a way, now as she's saying, it's not that it goes back to being a mission of vengeance, because as she said, it's a rescue mission. Well, at the end of that mission, they have Korik back. Now he's depowered, but you have saved Korik. So you fulfilled your rescue mission, right? But what's the reason to keep going on? And I think that's where Tegan's death comes in. And I think that's what you talked about that was what the Hunter quote comes in, right? The idea of seeking justice. And again, that's another pivot for Vesper on her journey, that she will now go after this evil. This is going after Korik's brother here, not because she's angry, not to get revenge or anything like that, but because that's what needs to be done, because that's the right thing to do, because having that evil out in the world is not good for anybody, and they're the ones that can stop it. So it's a third motivation for her to go out into the world and to keep moving forward and to keep trying on this quest.
Speaking of motivation, what is Agatha Murdoch's motivation for bringing Vesper back. That's her aunt. It seems like she doesn't like Vesper. Vesper doesn't like her.
Yeah.
I was unclear, like, does she feel bound to protect her as a family member, or does she have her own purposes for wanting her back? And ultimately, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't.
It just seems like one of those things where when she left, her aunt probably would have been like, okay, great. I'm not going to lose any sleep over this.
Yeah.
But here she is hunting with bounty hunters.
I mean, the aunt character is very one-sided. There's not much to her. I think the way I read it was simply like her father's dead. That got back to her aunt. And it's like, well, now this is the only family she has left,
Right.
So just so that there is a level of, yes, she does care for her. There's a familiar bond there. How she shows it may not be, I mean, not that she raised her poorly. She raised her under the guidelines and kind of thoughts of what the time is that Victoria area is, right? Of how women should act. And that's so she's trying to raise her the way that she was raised, which is how society tells you a woman needs to be. But I do think there's a level of genuine care there. We don't really see that, I think, because the aunt character is pretty undercooked.
Yeah, no, she's kind of our Uncle Owen. Uncle Owen and Peru, which is like, whatever I do, I'm just going to raise you in a way that keeps you away from the stuff your father got into.
Exactly. Yeah.
And which means being a Victorian lady.
Yeah. Which in the beginning is you're simply the motivation for the character to leave.
Right.
And that all
was
you're
a
there
Star Wars reference, by the way, for anyone who missed it.
Yeah.
If anyone missed that, but listens to our podcast, I don't know
this far.
Yeah, I don't know who the crosshairs were there.
Yeah, that Venn diagram be strange there. But yeah, so it is strange. It is. I will grant you that it's a little strange that she's out there, contracting Hunter to go find her. But you
needed Hunter in the game.
Yes, you needed the extra character there.
Wouldn't really be hunting Vesper, and that's kind of an interesting component of this book. There's almost always badges and sheriffs and the law in westerns, and there's none of that.
Well, but we do see wanted posters,
right? But there's no sheriff or deputy.
There is not. Yeah. And so the law would not be wanting to bring Vesper back to her aunt. They'd want to take her in, because she has killed people, right? Yeah, various crimes or whatnot. So. But yeah, no, it's almost like just a matter of we want to introduce this other character, in a way, because as we find out at the end, this is the one character that lives on, because we see Tegan die, we see Dom get to have a big hero moment, a big capital H hero moment there. And so we're left with Vesper and Korik, who we know go into the amulet together. So there has to be someone left out there. And that's who Hunter is, who's introduced in volume 10. So, but yeah, I don't think there's anything, we're supposed to read anything into the aunt character. Like I said, I think she's undercooked, because we never see her, because she only exists in her stately manner,
right?
Outside of the world of the West that Vesper and Magnus and all them travel in. So it's just a matter of, again, she's just kind of a plot engine of, she in the first arc, she's just there to get Vesper out the door, or want her to leave, go out with her father. And here in the beginning, again, just there to set this other person in motion, to have Hunter out there looking for her, and I guess also to give Hunter some not motivation, but give him a reason to go out into the West, find Vesper, and then choose to not collect the bounty. Because which is another famous trope of the West and bounty hunters. You're going out there,
the bounty hunter with a conscience, which is it's Django Unchained, right?
Yeah. It's the bounty hunter is initially presented as an antagonist, not necessarily a bad guy, but antagonist, because, hey man, I don't care what your story is, I'm getting paid by this person to find you and bring you back. And it's like, if you run away again, that's fine by me. I don't care. I got paid to do a job, and that's it. And so we get Hunter now to be that character of, yes, I found you. My job's to bring you back. But wait, now we're caught up in something bigger now. Wait, what's going on? Okay, this is now something I can't ignore. Now I'm a part of this. And when it's all over, it's like, nope, forget the bounty. Like there are greater, bigger things in the world to worry about. And so yeah, you get that other famous character archetype in the story in Hunter.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
There is a lot of mysticism around this book, and we don't really get more. It's just what we can infer from what we've seen and what we pull into it from other things. I did like chapter 15, where basically everyone who touches it has like the comp again here. It's like Scarlet Witch visions from Age of Ultron. Vesper touches it and she sees, her father dying and falling through the ice and all this other stuff. Dom is too close to it, and we see him reliving his father's death. He pulls the trigger and shoots her in the back, and there's that beautiful panel where it's like adult him and young him, where their faces are kind of stacked, and that's all in issue 15.
Yeah.
So all of that to say, it's like it's just an evil book that brings out it's like the embodiment of evil, which is a great MacGuffin. Nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of is what it is. I want to know a little more about it, but I don't think there's anything more available.
Yeah, I mean, that does feel like maybe that could have been, one of those short stories at the end. Just, hey, here's the source of this. Here's where this book comes from. Otherwise it's a little hand wavy of just, listen, there's a mask that you put on, and when you do that, like you get flaming wings that can make you go real fast. It's just it's one of the things that you just accept, that there are magical objects in this world that imbue the user with some level of power for good or for ill. So yeah, it just falls in line in that. And
that being said,
well, okay,
there's one clause that I'll give it here in its favor. The characters don't know either. Like we're in the same position as the characters. It would drive me crazy if everyone in the world knew and I didn't, or vice versa.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that the book gets as much explanation as every other object. They all get the equal amount of no explanation. It's just that they exist, and no one knows why. Not even the curator of the museum who has all of Vesper's dad's stuff there. Yeah, it's just it's the same level of non-explanation. You just accept it, and you're right about that. That the characters accept it, and so we, the reader, have to accept it. We don't know why this happens. We just know what it does, and maybe how it can help or hurt us on our quest. So
I don't think it doesn't impede the storytelling or the reading experience, just the podcast discussion. The book club breakdown of it, where everybody starts to speculate and opine.
As a reader, you just have to accept that this is what it is, and if you do that, then it flows right off you. It just, okay, this is another object. What can it do? Okay, here's what it does. So there is no, there's no. I'm with you though. Where do these objects come from? How do they get their power? What's their origin? I'm always thinking about those things. But I think you're right. Even if we had gotten the origin of one of the things, like let's say the book, and we didn't get the origin or even implied origin of any of the other artifacts, that probably would have driven me a little more crazy of like, well, we got one of them. Like, couldn't there just be a whole, again, we think about if this were a longer series kind of thing, you could, the finding, the usage, the history of one of these objects would have been like a 3-issue arc thing, like here's the story of the mask that gives you the flaming wings. Here's the story of the gold ball that gives you like super strength. Like what's the origin? Where did it come from? What part of the world? Who are the people that made it, found it, discovered it, or whatever? Those are all things that I would love to know more of. And it's the kind of thing I think about in every kind of story that has supernatural elements or fantastical elements like this. But again, what you said, not critical at all to the telling of this story.
No, and I think sometimes we make fools of ourselves because of this, because I pulled up, I had an email exchange with my uncle about the Barbie movie after we both saw it.
Okay.
and he loved it. Said warm-hearted, clever, amazing production design. SFX were great. Robbie and Gosling, pretty good. And then he said, with after an ellipsis, since I'm such a big sci-fi nerd, I struggled with the world building here. I mean, what is Barbie Land? Why do the Mattel suits know about Barbie Land? Is there a Barbie Land for every past owner of Barbie? And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, you're really you're harsh in the mellow here of the Barbie movie.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if I'm doing the same thing to the Plume verse.
And I think that's a really fair comparison, because I won't lie. When I saw Barbie, there's a part of me that, like, after the movie was over, I had no problem watching the movie.
Right.
But it was
suspended belief during the movie. Same with the book in this book.
Yeah. It was after it was actually in the time after I got out of Barbie and was waiting to go in to see Oppenheimer. It was, you start just in the idle moments of like, why does Barbie Land exist? How does that exist? And how do people know about it? Mattel knows about it, but like, what are these forms of travel? Like the rollerblading to the jet ski, the camp, like why is that just known? And then you realize at that point, you're putting way too much thought into the idea of what Barbie Land is and its relationship to the quote unquote real world. But yeah, those
if
are
Oppenheimer himself were to explain it to you, it'd be like his saying, light has the properties of both particles and waves, but that's impossible. Yes. But it is.
Yeah. But it is.
And it's just a quantum scientist could explain to you the mechanics of Barbie Land or of the Plume Book of Magic.
I think what it comes down to for both something like Plume here and in Barbie is that those are thoughts that come to you after the fact. They don't, like, at no point during the movie, during the reading of this book or the watching of that movie, did I bump up against those issues. And I'm not saying now, there are some readers and some watchers who maybe that's all they can think about, and that may deter their enjoyment of the story. But for me, I think
people like that, it may deter their enjoyment of life.
Maybe so. And maybe someone like that is just predisposed to not enjoy a story like that. But when I was reading Plume, at no point did any of that, gee, I wonder if there's more to this, did that hinder my enjoyment of this? I think because I was locked in on the characters. I'm locked in on that core group, because again, it's the core group of characters are really all the characters in the world. There aren't many ancillary characters that we're not seeing. So it's this small group, and I'm so locked in on what we're being shown with them that these other ancillary things don't take me out of the story. They're just things I think about after the fact, when I have a little moment to think, just to sit down and ruminate, like, oh, gee, yeah, what about that, and that? But because I didn't think about that as I was experiencing the story the first time, to me, that is something I can hand wave. If these things are coming up as I'm reading the story, if I'm having these questions because I feel in the moment that they are critical to the storytelling, like I'm losing something of what's trying to be conveyed to me because I don't have this information, then I'll be more critical about not getting something like that. But in the case of Plume and with Barbie, at no point did I think those logistical questions impeded my ability to enjoy the story. Not saying that the stories are perfect, because they're not. There are issues here, and then we talked about the aunt here, a character that's simply there to, move plot along for other people. So it's not that it's a perfect story; nothing is. But those questions I have on the back end, they don't take me out of the story. I'm not removed from it, because maybe that's my brain subconsciously telling me that this stuff isn't important because it didn't come up in the moment. It didn't come up as it was experiencing it, which tells me,
well, they didn't.
My mind, I'm not bridging those gaps as the story's going. I can bridge them to get the story as is. I'm only finding gaps after the fact. I don't see any gaps initially.
Right, and she didn't fudge the rules with it at all.
No,
if you just start pulling random powers out of it,
sure,
or all of a sudden it can do something different than it did in the last one, that's where you have to explain yourself.
Yeah.
When it's had a constant type of power the whole time, it doesn't really change. People aren't getting clever with it and using it in different ways. that it's like, okay, we just admit this thing exists.
This is what it does. That's it.
Yeah. So anyway, all that say, most of the drama in volumes 3 and 4 are centered around this book, because the team at the end of volume 3 is Corey, and I like that they call him Corey when he's human again.
Yeah.
And Corey, I mean, it is just a little clever nod of like, oh, he feels more like our friend now.
Yeah.
So he gets a nickname. So it's Corey, Vesper, Hunter, and Dom.
Yeah.
You told me 4 issues ago that's going to be your new lineup. I would have been like, I don't think so.
Yeah. But I think
that being said, Dom's still kind of reluctant, still purely in it. So here's the thing. Yes, he is motivated by revenge, just like Vesper. But once he has his vengeance and he has Korik, he's still just a jerk. I mean, he's still just in it for money. He's trying to pawn off relics, even though he's seen all the negative things these relics can do. They've literally destroyed his life and cost his father his life, and Vesper's father his life. He's like, but still, why shouldn't I give these to the highest bidder? It's like, you really don't understand the stakes here. So he is just the worst.
No, I think so. But I think there's also a level of, like when going, I'm trying to find the.
See, that's why I wanted him to have the Jafar treatment. I wanted him to be the genie at the end.
But
trick him into like, oh, you get all this power.
And I'm trying to think. So the issue not where Tegan actually dies, but when she's mortally wounded.
That is the end of issue 15, I believe.
Is it? No,
Dom shoots Vesper in the back.
No. Where Tegan dies.
That's 13.
That's like, is it 12 or 13?
She gets shot at the end of 12.
Yeah. So
they're burying her in 13. Yeah.
So at the end of 12, what do we see there? Like, Dom is holding Tegan, right? Because we know that they had a relationship, that the two of them have history, some of it good, probably most of it bad. But I think there's a level of when Tegan dies, I think I'm not saying that's a full breaking point for Dom, but I think there's a level of like there's a shared level of grief there now, I guess.
Yes.
Versus, your dad killed my dad, I killed your dad, or sorry, my dad killed your mom, so your dad killed my dad, then I killed your dad. Now there's a shared loss in Tegan there. That's felt
like
by
full
all
page. He's holding Tegan's dead body. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So
shared grief, not the strongest motivator.
But
in
I
terms
think,
of building a team, that's technically, I guess, what the Avengers aim to be.
They're
not the pre-Vengers.
They're the Avengers. But no, I think when you look at this group, because after Tegan has actually died there, and then there's a sit down with the three of them and Hunter, and Hunter is basically like, how you know what's going on here? It's like right. Basically like, what have I gotten myself into? This is just supposed to be a find and retrieval, and I think with that group there, while they know on some level they can't trust Dom, it's the idea of like, I know you're going to betray me, and you know you're going to betray me. Ergo, we can trust each other. I can trust you not because you're trustworthy, but because all of us know what your nature is going to be. So thus we can rely, we can
count on you to be yourself. Yeah.
We can count because
that, and we know that your current need is greater than your
and
wicked desires.
Yeah. And so the idea that you say, how strong is it? I don't know how strong it is. It doesn't really need to be. And they just know that whether he is out for vengeance or justice or whatever, he is willing to be with them, because whether he understands it or not, there is that shared grief of the loss of Tegan. And so that is enough to bring the group together, with the idea that, this guy will probably betray us at some point. But, it's like, well, he's going to betray us at some point, but if we're aware of it, we can keep an eye out for it. We can plan for that when it happens. It's like siding with Loki or something like that,
Right.
Every time
exactly
Thor
what
does
it
that.
is.
It's that I know you're going to betray me. You know you're going to do it. So let's just, we can work together. That's enough common ground for us to be on the same team for at least a little while. and it's enough for Dom to stick around. And yeah, he's still a jerk because he's just a jerk by nature. But we see him, as we go through the story here, like he's in the fight. He's there, and yeah, when you referenced it earlier in what 15 or 16 there, when they're having all the visions and everyone's basically reliving like the worst moments of their life. We see him, he comes to Vesper's rescue there, and then but we see him also, we see what kind of trauma and fear he's living with as well. So, in a lot of ways we see that it's humanizing our villain, or again, he's not a villain at this point. He's just he's not even an antagonist at this point anymore.
Yeah.
Because he's not part of the team. He's just the jerk that's on the team now. But we see a more human side to him. He gets a little more relatable, I guess. And he has a chance to make the big sacrifice.
Right.
In the moment, I guess that he's already dying. So he's made like a fatalist move of like, if I do nothing, I die. If I try to blow this thing up and kill myself, I still die, but I might take it with me, so there's kind of an inevitability to it, but we get to see a little more to him.
Yeah. He still seems like in Deadpool 2, the X-Force team that he slaps together. Mm-hmm. He seems like a guy who would have walked in for that. And it's like, you got on the team because, we have open spots and you're here.
Yeah.
Like we already know you. We're not going to introduce another cast member.
Yeah. And they also do understand he has use and value. Like he can fight. He's good enough. He can shoot. He is determined. He has some level of knowledge with some of these artifacts because he's been hunting them too.
Yes.
And so it's not like he has no skills. Yes.
2 murder attempts from Magnus.
Yeah. He did lead his own gang, which presumably successfully evaded authorities. Although again, we have other questions about the viability of law enforcement out in the West at this time. But yeah, it's not like he has skills that are useful, while not necessarily having a personality that's compatible, a demeanor that's compatible. But he is useful in what they're going to try to do, and it's like they're counting on that.
And ultimately, you're a fighter, like Tegan, becomes the most useful version of themselves.
Yes,
and then dies.
But he reaches that when working with and in the company of Tegan and of Vesper and Cork.
Right.
Being on this quest, on this journey, is what allows them to be the best version, or at least not the worst version of themselves.
Right. Yeah, and then basically the wrap up. Dom's dead, Tegan's dead, Vesper and Cork are now permanent possessions of this ring.
The ring, yeah.
And Hunter did destroy the book, so there's like no way to undo this now, right? They are permanently in this state.
Yeah, one would think, unless there's like a second copy of the book somewhere.
It's in comics. There's always, there's always more super soldier serum. There's always more.
There's always another version somewhere. But yeah, from what we can see as of now, we have them. But
they just seem the 2 of them happy in that state together, as opposed to how miserable Cork was.
Yes. Yeah.
And how much longing and search for meaning was dominating Vesper's life. So kind of a best case scenario, even though it's not the classic happy ending.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I was very thrown off by the jump to the great grandson of Hunter.
So before we get to there, I want to get to the end of 16 there, when we get this moment and it's like, oh wow, because now we get the
it
gold
look like
glow.
a Thanos attack.
Well, we get the gold after the end, and they've won, and they're all good, and they've set Cork's brother free, and we see both Vesper and Cork with the white hair, the gold glow around the eyes and the face, and then this beautiful loving moment, and it says we're in this together. Then they hug, and then poof, and then we cut back to Hunter, and he has the ring, and he's like, whoops. And it goes back to the idea of, when do these people come out of the enchanted object,
right? Does he have to throw himself off a cliff?
Yeah. Well, and we see that later. I see he buries Dom. He goes back to Vesper's aunt, and then he he's like, well, I got to try this here, right? How do I get them back out of the ring of him? Yeah, trying to get out of, falls up the cliff. He we assume again there are two hands that reach out for him, that they save him, and then there's a jump, and now we're thinking like, okay, you know, how long has this been going on? How often do they come out? He obviously refers to them, you know, keep them safe and they'll keep you safe.
He's got this picture with them.
Yeah, there's a relationship with them. You know, the book is still there. It is still there. I did remember the Vesper's aunt wanted him to destroy the book. He made the fire. He didn't destroy it. It looks like that's the book that he goes to his.
It's very much the Lord of the Rings flashback, right? Where he's got the ring over the pit, and he says, "No, and he
exactly, yeah." But then this idea of it comes to of how often in the life here has they appeared, and I guess we see that wall of pictures, and I'm looking up here, see this wall of pictures, and then so real quick here, on the
I was trying to figure out the earliest that could be. I was like, okay, there's a commercial plane in the air.
Well, I'm seeing the last picture here when the great grandson is looking at the old timey photograph, and there's a wall of photographs, and in the upper right there looks like an early automobile. Is that from the?
That is, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there's that there, and
You're
then
driving me crazy.
Yeah, but then we see some pictures of these white-haired people there. There's Korik sitting in front of a television with some kids there. There's looks like both Korik and Vesper in front of a fairly modernist looking house. Yeah. On the far left there, looks like one of the photographs is one of this guy's ancestors or old people in maybe some sort of military uniform, maybe like a World War II uniform kind of thing. And then we get into some color photographs and all of that.
It's a clutch ring for making it through the World Wars.
Yeah. Well, but if you have these two magical beings on your side, who's taking that from you? You know?
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, what we learn, which is my last note that I have here that I haven't addressed, is when Dom is in possession of Korik, and he says, "The protection I offer works better if you're not wielding a gun." And I was like, "Was that actually part of the magic, or is that just logic?" It's like, if you're not starting fights, I can protect you better. Or is it like,
that's
I protect the defenseless, not someone who's being an aggressor?
I didn't think about that. I thought about it in the way of, it's easier to protect someone who's not out there just starting stuff, you know?
Right. That was my initial read, and then I was like,
I'm sorry. Maybe better description of I better serve protecting people who aren't antagonized. If you have a gun, especially in that world, the idea is you are looking for it, right? You're looking to start a fight.
Right.
So I protect someone who is being assailed versus someone doing the assailing, you know, and that's obviously who Dom is. That's how I read that. So how would that work in wartime? If you are a soldier on the front,
that's where you hacksaw Ridget. You become a conscientious objector.
Yeah.
Take your ring into battle.
Yeah.
And say, I'm a totally defenseless person on this battlefield, trying to get people to the medical tent.
Or does that again come to the idea of these two having a conscience, being like, because they're living in an era where war existed, you know, they're not, you know, Vesper would not be unfamiliar with the idea of war. And so neither would Korik in his 600 some odd years.
Yeah. So many wars.
He's seen, plenty of wars. So the idea of a just war, you know, if you're there, you know, and you lay out what the sides are in World War I or World War II or whatever it is, be like, listen, here's where we are. Like, are you down with our side? You know, can they make a choice and be like, yes, we will protect you, because by protecting you, we are protecting this larger ideal of the side. Again, scare quotes, what we're fighting on.
Everything that we learned about Korik seems to say that would be the case.
And that that'd be the case now. That maybe, especially after his encounter with Vesper, that has given him some sort of more fulfilling life as a being, be it a human or a magical powered ghost or whatever, that's unlocked something to where he seems to have more of a conscience now and more of a connection to humanity, I guess, because he forged a connection with someone again after so many years. So I got to imagine the two of them together, if you're wielding that ring in, you know, 1945 Europe. There's some level of discussion going on of like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what the sides are. Yeah, I know we're not perfect over here, but here's what we're fighting against. You got to think that they'd be willing to jump in on that, right?
I would think so, especially since they have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Like the only thing they could lose is the person they care about and are protecting.
Yeah.
And they're just, part of their protecting might be saying, why don't you try to get a job in navigation? Why don't you enlist so you can pick your role before you get drafted? Which, like, that is actually the logic of Cork. Cork is like, if I can guide you to better decisions, you will be safer because I won't have to do as much protecting.
That is true.
And he's not a balloon. He's not an immortal bubble that protects her. It's just like having a really good hired gun at your side. And that can't get you out of everything.
But now you've got 2 hired guns on your side.
It still can't get you out of everything. Like, there are still things you wouldn't want to try to do. Like, if I gave you, 2 people who are good with a gun and said, like, well, you should feel fine robbing this bank now, right?
No.
Well, these 2 people are going to shoot you. It's like, well, there's a lot of other things that can go wrong.
Yeah, but they're magical, immortal, powerful,
I mean, he can like force push too. Like, it's not just.
Although, if we were to get real about the specifics of this book, Hunter's descendants are going to be black. They're going to be people of color.
Right, which means
they're not getting
danger all the time, everywhere. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that they're not getting a job. They're not getting to pick their positions if they enlist somewhere in the war, in the army or whatever it is. They're not.
And depending on where he lives, it may be equal chances of having of being in life threatening trouble.
Going to war
or not. Yeah. So,
which is, I mean, that doesn't feel unintentional to me. The idea of like, hey, we'll give this kid. Although as we get down to the back there, it looks like they're, by the time his great grandson is born there, he's a little more mixed race. But again, the idea that a black man through
it is still a violent country for
for people of color. Yeah. So no, in the army, he wouldn't have had that choice. So he probably would have been on the front line. So you have Cork and Vesper. You have these 2 immensely powerful magical beings. Probably would have been all right surviving the war. I think if you have the 2 of them there.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of like all the Deathly Hallows rolled into one, and it's like you can use it for protection of yourself, you can use it for protection of others, or you could try to wield it as a weapon. But it's going to backfire on you if you do it that way. But
well, again, it's not like they're choosing to be at war. They're going to war.
This is such an absurd hypothetical.
It really is. It really is. But again, I think it comes down to the idea we talked about last week about like how much agency do these characters have? Did Cork have? Because there was only the one of him at the time, and I have to imagine now, because he has Vesper, and at that point now it's been he was 600 years by himself, and then it's been 100 some odd years, 150 years maybe at most,
right?
I
would guess.
I assume that's modern day when it was being written there. Great grandfather, right? It was just one great, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you have kids when you're 18 versus 40, which was more common.
And did Hunter already have children at that point when he went out for that bounty? There's no way to know. But if so let's say 150 years. So
we'll call it great.
I think that's what it said. I think it was just one great. That was what the lady there said when she gave the boy the box. I think it was just great grandfather. But so 150 years they've been protecting the same family, knowing that it's Hunter's family. So it's been passed down that far in this one family. You got to think that there's more. A higher level, a greater level of agency in terms of how they interact with these people, because they're not strangers. They don't consider them strangers, because I'm going to assume that these are people that they have been watching over their entire lives.
Right.
From whether or not Hunter had family when he got the 2 of them in the ring or started one after the fact, they have been with them the entire time. And so their relationship to their bonds or their duty, being tethered to this ring, this object here. I would think their relationship to that is different than what Corix was for the first 600 years of his life, being passed around, whatever it is, that the two of them are together in a thing that they chose, and they're protecting the family and the legacy of a man that meant something to them both personally.
Yeah, and I think this is much more like, it's being treated much more like the Cloak of Invisibility than the Elder Wand.
Yeah, that's
Coric's history was Elder Wand. It was a bloody trail.
Yes. Yeah.
His guys keep getting killed, because they keep acting stupidly and sticking their heads up because they've got this protection.
Yeah. The idea of thinking I'm invulnerable, I'm invulnerable because I have this magical protector. Yeah. And then now that it's being passed down through multiple generations, in this one family, it ties them. I would imagine they wouldn't feel like it's a burden to be tied to Hunter's family, to keep doing this, to watch out for them because of that connection. Because it's personal, it's meaningful to the two of them when they were both human. Because obviously, at the time Coric meets Hunter, he is human. He doesn't have his powers,
right?
Or at least that transition happens when they encounter Hunter. So the idea that it means more to them, that it's almost like they're not bound to the ring, not to steal too much from.
A lot like
not to borrow too heavily from Tolkien, but they don't feel bound. They don't feel duty bound to the ring. They feel duty bound to Hunter's and his family,
Yes.
and that's what matters to them. And it's like that they can accept and understand and be comfortable with, that we are passing down and we are guarding his legacy. And it's not about, oh, gee, we're stuck to whoever has this ring. The idea that whoever has this ring, and that's what that note is, take care of them and they'll take care of you, or whatever it is. Keep them safe and they'll keep you safe. That's the legacy of Hunter being passed down through generations. And I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a different kind of ending, as we talked about way back at the beginning of this, different kind of ending than I would have expected.
Yeah. And it endeared me to the book that much more.
Yeah.
That it was like, okay, we're doing kind of a fun tropey thing with a spin on it. And then we also put a spin on the ending, to the point where it's like, you didn't follow the protector trope. You didn't follow all the Western trope per se.
Yeah.
And you didn't follow the Disney ending.
Yeah.
You actually did invent something very original here.
Mm-hmm. At least something different. And I like that it was done that way, and we got there without it being major twist. Like,
right. No, it wasn't earth-shattering twist, but I was surprised.
Yes. Yeah. But there were steps throughout. You could see there was logical progression there that, and that's, again, even with the time jump there, because we don't need to see Coric and Vesper reach out and save Hunter from the cliff to know what's happening there,
Right.
That's a nice, we don't have to cut the camera back to them to beat it overhead of our audience, but there's enough of a trail of the characters and the story there that, yeah, it's a surprising ending because it's different, but it isn't a gotcha ending. Like, hey, look what I did something different and cool. It isn't a twist. You get there and there's a natural progression that feels like it makes sense. And at the same time, it feels like an ending that you weren't expecting.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing more to say about it aside from I'm super excited to pick the brain of Lynn Smith.
Definitely. Yeah.
I can't wait. We're pretty much recording this series in order, which was not something we always do on this podcast.
Yeah. It's
but we did 1 and 2, now 3 and 4. Now we'll talk to Lynn Smith.
Yeah.
So she can correct, things that we've been wrong in our thinking, or if we're misguessing influences.
Yeah.
But really, just so many questions about the decision making that went into this book and the craft and the storytelling.
And if we find out we're wrong about something, we will 100% go back and clip the recordings.
It will
the
be
last two
scrubbed
episodes
from the internet.
Yeah. So
they say it is impossible, but it will.
You won't even know if you're listening to this. You won't even know if we got anything wrong, because we're going to clip that stuff out before it has a chance to publish. But no, I'm looking forward to this. I'm super, super curious about her influences, both in storytelling and in art style and everything like that. I want to know what went into this specifically, and kind of how she got to telling this story, because it's super fun. And I said I like that it subverts expectation enough to where
yes,
everything still feels familiar. Like I said, all the character archetypes are there, all the a whole lot of the I mean, the only Western trope I think they were missing is that we didn't get a big train heist, like an actual train heist.
Oh yeah,
that's probably the one Western trope we didn't get. But character archetypes I think were all there, and so I there's a very traditional sense of the vibe of the story, but it's like so many things go in directions that are unexpected at the start, but they definitely don't feel unearned. When you get there, everything makes sense, that you understand why characters make the choices they did, whether or not you agree with them is a different story, but nothing comes out of the blue. Nothing is left. Nothing. The only character that has no real explanation or finale or anything is the aunt character. We don't really know her motivation other than this girl's my family. I want to keep her safe.
But every story has that, right?
It does. It does.
At some point, you're so far away from the central characters that it's just like people are going to be bored to tears if we go into this character.
With our central group, which included in some order and some combination, you have Vesper, Coric, Tegan, Magnus. We'll include her father in there, Dominic, and Hunter. Those six right there in some combination. You understand all those characters by the end of the book. You understand their motivations and the decisions they make towards I guess their ultimate ends. We see three of them die. We see two of them become immortal magical beings, and we see the legacy of the last one in Hunter there. Everyone makes sense in that core group, and I think that's smart storytelling. And what we're talking about here, it's 17 issues that was originally published on the web, not initially in print format, but it's smart and efficient storytelling, and I look forward to talking to Kaylin about that and diving deeper into her process.
Yeah. So if now that you've finished listening, feel free to give it a reread. Again, plumecomic.com, the easiest, most accessible book we've ever covered. If you can get your hands on it, grab the omnibus. It's a beautiful, beautiful edition. And includes some bonus stories that I referenced here. And really, if you're a completionist, and most of us comic readers are, that's something you're going to want to get your hands on. And then check your local cons. She does a reasonable sized circuit traveling, but we'll ask her about that in our upcoming interview. So thank you for listening. Please like and share with a friend, and tune in next week for our exclusive interview with Caitlin Smith.
Peace.